board met tonight in executive session. We're now ready to continue with the public portion of our program. For the President's report, I want to recognize the passing of somebody who has been very important in the life of this district and also in the life of the community. Lillian Ashenfelter died on December 11th. She, as some of you know, was the wife of Horace Ashenfelter, our Glen Ridge Olympian, but perhaps more important to this place is she was a longtime teacher of math in the district. Many people remember her fondly. I've met more people who have said, my child had her, my sister, my brother had her. She was revered as a teacher of math and as a mentor to students and a friend to students. She died at the age of 94 after a long life, very well lived, and many civic contributions to Glen Ridge. She died only about, I would say, 9 months after her husband Horace died. So our thoughts, and she was the mother and grandmother of Glen Ridge High School graduates. So our thoughts are with the Ashenfelter family at this time. And that is the President's report. We will have all kinds of things in the superintendent's report, including recognition of some good friends of ours.
Yes, where to begin? We're going to begin actually with the update on district testing. When I first did the park results, at that time I also went over our AP results. We did not have updated numbers on our SAT and ACT testing results, so I'm going to go over them real quick. There is a copy of the PowerPoint on the table if you didn't get it. But you're going to see that our school continues to perform, the high school students continue to perform well on these tests. And this has happened for a number of years, and as we're seeing a larger class size, as we're seeing students who are more mobile and more students moving into the district, for us to continue to reach the level that we have on testing is always a positive sign. So our SAT numbers, we're only looking at 2 years because we've only had 2 graduating classes that have taken the new, what we call it the new format of the SAT. So our numbers compared to last year are a little bit higher, which is always nice to see. The state numbers are also a bit higher, and you kind of expect that with the new test. That first year, people aren't familiar with the format or how the types of questions being asked on the test, and as the students become more familiar, as the outside agencies, as the schools become more familiar with the test, usually the first year 2 and 3, you see improvements in scores. But looking at our average score, we're looking at 1,210 as a combined score, which is outstanding. Our standard deviation, I know we'll remember asked for that, is 151 for a combined score. And just to give you a better idea of how that relates to nationally, if you look at a score 1,000, that is at the 52 percentile. 94% of our students were 1,000 or above. If you look at 1,200, which is at roughly the 82nd percentile, 51% of our students were above 1,200. And if you look at 1,400, which is the 96th percentile, 12% of our students were above that. So those are outstanding numbers, and it kind of falls in line with our academic rigor, our expectations of the students, and where our students are ending up going to college. When we have 95% of our graduates going on to 4-year colleges and university, you would expect these numbers to be on the higher end. This is only college board participation, and I just stumbled across this. The College Board does the SATs, BSATs, and the AP exams, and I just thought it was interesting when we started looking at our participation rates compared to other districts. We would expect our grade 10 and our grade 11 BSAT numbers to be high participation rate because we actually administer the test during the day, so the 10th graders and 11th graders who are in attendance will be taking that test. And you can probably look at the other results and notice other districts have a similar format. If you look at Verona and West Essex and Chatham, at least in 10th grade, their numbers, if they're that high, they're probably posting the test in their school during school hours. Our 12th grade SAT numbers, 85%, which is a high number. And again, with 95% of our students going on to college, you would expect a high percentage of our students taking the SATs. And our AP numbers, which are 44% of our students took one or more AP exams. And the only school up there, and I think it was the only school in the state, if I remember correctly, that was above, there's only public school that was a non-admission public school that was above us, I think was Verona in the state. I may be off, we were definitely top 5. So to have 44% of our students taking AP exams is something that we've started to move towards. We wanted every student who's going to college to experience an AP course just to help them prepare for college. So hopefully we see that number start creeping up a little higher as we're offering more diverse AP courses in the high school. Our ACT, I put out a 5-year span just so we can comparatively look at the last 5 years. The ACT format has not changed. And you can see that our numbers relatively are the same, high achieving numbers. Our composite score, which is the final score when you start looking at the 4 different categories, 25.8. It falls in line with where we have been the last 4 or 5 years. We did have that in 2016, really the 26.8 was set the bar for the rest of the classes, and down below our standard deviation of 5, so you're into stats and you get an idea of where our students fall. And I broke up the ACT scores again, just looking at percentiles. If you look at the 50th percentile, which is a score of 20 on the ACT, 91% of our students who took the ACT were at least at the 50th percentile. Then if you look at a score of 29 or higher, which is the 90th percentile, 36% of our students were at that number. And you can see we're having, just looking at last year, a higher number of our mid-level students score within that higher than the 50th percentile, 91%, compared to where it was for previous year. And that 36%, although it wasn't as high as the class of 2017, it's an improvement over the class of 2015 and 16. You know, the ACT is still a relatively new experience for our students. I'd say it's probably in the last 5 or 6 years where it started to gain popularity. Prior to that, we only had a handful of students taking it. Last year, we had 83 students out of a senior class of 124 take the ACT exam. So typically what's happening is we're having students take both SAT and ACT, but then we also have some students who will have a preference for one exam over the other. And if I'm not mistaken, that's our numbers. So I'm going to throw it out to the board first if they have questions. And I'll take it.
Board members, any questions?
Yes.
For, I don't know what you call them, most selective schools, isn't it like a 30, isn't it in the 30s that you want to have like a 30 average?
Yes.
32, do you have those numbers?
I have them in my office. I don't have them on me. But I can share them with you and at the next board meeting on January 3rd.
Other board questions?
I know that there's a growing trend of colleges and universities that are not making tests or
Test optional.
Test optional. Is that something that guidance is seeing that may affect the overall? I mean, have children decided not to take the test because of that, or?
We're seeing out of last year's 124 graduates, I'd say there's 10 or 12 students who did not take either the SAT or ACT. And I know some students are choosing the test optional, so but for the most part, the vast majority of our students are taking one or the other, if not both. It's becoming a more popular choice, not so much in this school, but there's been more interest than there was 2 or 3 years ago. More schools are offering that option, and I think that's why you're seeing more students go down that road.
Any questions from board members? Okay, we will open up, since our reports are kind of in groups this tonight. Specific subjects will open up for public comment or questions on the adjustment report. Yes, Mrs. Summer.
Like, you give numbers here, which is great, 609 average, and that's 601 average, and comparing it year to year. But you don't give percentiles. And every year, I must say, I wonder why. Because when you receive your SATs, that's what I did, it gives you your score and it gives you a percentile. And that tells you how well you're doing compared to the rest of the world. And same thing on the ACTs, like 26.5. You know, some people know better than I that 32 is what's needed for a selective school. But if you gave me a percentile and you said, well, this is about the 70th percentile of performance, or the 90th, or the 30th.
So you want a percentile for our average?
Sure, yeah, because that's standard.
Yeah, I provide some percentile based on
Right,
what
but
have
you
been key scores based on the SAT and ACT that I identified.
Right, but you don't give us
not a
percentiles
problem.
for the exact. The other thing, hold on, let me just finish. The other question is, one thing we discussed the last time about scores was, it would be really helpful to see what the average scores and percentiles are of our leading competitors, or, you know, what we consider comparable schools. Now, it's helpful here that you give participation rates, but one thing we had asked for, and even Mr. Bonnet has followed up and said, could we please know how we're performing compared to other key schools percentile-wise? And that way, we can also measure if we're getting better, if we're getting worse, what do we need to do. It's part of continuous improvement.
So, as I mentioned in October, this information wasn't released. Typically, when the information is released, the only information that is released is to individual districts. And later in the year, we'll be able to get comparative data with other schools. I know I recently, I recently attended a conference about some park scores, and in January, they told us that the state will be releasing all the district's park scores, so that's when we can start doing the comparative approach. So when we get that data, I'll be more than happy to share.
So you'll give us the percentile?
Excuse me, I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to
Right.
ask.
Right.
Any other question? Yes.
I just want to answer this about the percentiles. Percentiles change depending on the test date. So it really, the most important thing is the numbers that we have here. You could have a 32 on one test date and be in the 99th percentile. You could have a 32 on another test date and be in the 97th percentile. Tests change depending on the test date. So really the most important things that we do have are these. Percentiles are very misleading. So.
Before I get back to you, Mrs. Summer, anybody else have any questions? Okay, Mrs. Summer.
So I just want to confirm that you will come back to us with percentiles on these.
Yes.
Is that fair?
Yes,
Okay.
on
The
our
other-
average scores you want.
The other thing that it was explained to me on SATs, when they give you a percentile on your individual score, it's not based on a test date. Maybe some up, just it's based on a database that they compare everybody to. That was my understanding. And it really almost doesn't make sense that percentiles would be compared on a daily basis, because it would mean nothing even to a college. Maybe there are scores that do that, I'm not arguing with
Colleges
that.
don't look at percentiles.
Oh, that's actually not correct.
Okay, other questions? All right, next, on to the next.
Next, we do have our friend Bill Schroeder back, who wanted to speak a little bit about the audit. I know there was some concerns and questions about the cafeteria numbers, and we did reach out to him after the last meeting, and he wanted to come back and expand on that.
Yes, I had to come back and be humble pie in that I misread my own audit report. One of the very important number service fund. My audit that I sent down was correct, but I misread it because when I was reading the draft, we put or inserted a row, and the numbers were wrong. And so the beginning fund balance for the food service was a negative 28,000, and I read it as we lost 28,000 during the year. So where we ended up, what I talked about, a positive 40,000 is correct. But I was wrong in that the current year, we actually made 68,000 to get to the 40,000. We started out 28 in whole, made 68 to get to 40. I apologize, the first time in 30 years I've made an error. I don't know what to say. I'm mortified that this became an issue. So I gave you 2 pages of the report, so I don't make a mistake again. Maybe you read it yourself. But the first page, which is G1, shows what I talked about at the last meeting. Our overall fund balance is 40,000. However, we have 51,000 in undepreciated fixed assets, leaving an unrestricted deficit of $11,000, which at the end of last year, or prior year actually, that was about $70,000. So that $68,000 really, and the second page, G2, shows where you made $68,688 during the year. So again, I'm very sorry that that became an issue. I'm sorry that I was so cocksure. I think Barbara even knew that I was wrong, but I was so positive in my presentation that I threw doubt into her mind that we knew that you had a good year this year, and I just misread it. So I don't know what else to say. I'm just sorry about that.
No, we appreciate you coming back to talk to us about that. Board members, do you have any questions for Bill?
We could start a new 38-year streak now.
That's right.
I really got out. I only have 1 year left.
That's true. That's true.
I did hear, though, that there were some questions about the audit, which amazed me, but I was happy. But I offer that in other districts, sometimes they open it up to the public, as you've done in your S&P scores, that volunteer, or I also offer, if you don't want to do that, if you want me to wait around for full public comment, I'll do that.
No, if you would stay with us for public comment, I'd appreciate it. We do have several other items for the superintendent's report, so make yourself comfortable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My last item is to recognize 2 individuals on the board who will be moving onward after this meeting. First, I'd like to recognize Allie Hilbreath. Been a board member since 2012. She's been a terrific asset for us. A lot of late nights on Tuesdays with the foundation, having meetings and representing the board. Allie's been terrific from my point of view of having her on the curriculum committee as a teacher in higher education. Her insights has been extremely meaningful to me and for the entire district, so I appreciate it, and you'll be greatly missed.
Thank you. And Allie, when you first ran for the board, you got nominated and then you had a surprise, right? And you did it and you ran for the board anyway, which I thought was courageous at the time. And I think that little Grayson, who is Allie's son, who was born during your first year of board service, has been to more board meetings than most members of the public. Allie has been a godsend to this board. Your background, you're an academic, you're a mom, you're a kind and compassionate and intelligent and sensible person, and it's just been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thank you. And you can always run again.
I have a long run here. My son is only 6.
Yeah, that's true. Think of the time.
Yeah, think of the time. Yes, no, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to serve on the board, but to work with some of our community's finest. I think it's the diverse and dynamic backgrounds that have been such an asset to me. It's all of those different mindsets coming together to have made some really good conscientious contributions to our community. So I look forward to, again, all of your careful and thoughtful attention that you give and continue to make as you go forward. And I will just see you on the flip side.
And board members, as long as Allie's still standing up, anything else to add? Thank you. Okay. Where did it go? Did you put it down? We have another plaque.
Where's the auditor?
The other member who's the last meeting tonight is Tim Keppel, has served on the board since 2008. For a number of those years, he's a vice president of the board. Tim has been I can't imagine the referendum first going to the vote, let alone passing and getting to the point where we are without his assistance. His insight, his dedication, his experience working with our board, our facilities committee, our architects, he just put so much effort into it, and this town will forever be in gratitude for having a new school based on your efforts. And same goes with the finance committee. Tim has been acting chair of the finance committee since I've been on board the last 4 years, and he's a hawk. He's watching over everything, making sure that we're spending the money in an appropriate manner, and that we're financially stable as we move forward. And he's always looking down the road. So Tim, thank you for everything. We'll greatly appreciate it.
And Tim is one of the few people in this room who can actually explain what excess surplus is. And you don't know how many people don't know what that is. But Tim, it has been such a pleasure. You've been an integral part of this board. This board has had many challenges. This board hired a superintendent. You're a big part of that. It's the most responsible and important thing a board can do. We have gotten through budgets thanks to you in very hard times and made it all work. There aren't even I don't have enough words. So thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you. It's an honor to work with all of you and just to be with people that want to spend their own personal time trying to make the town and the district better and being constructive rather than critical, and it's really just been a pleasure and an honor. So thank you very much.
Superintendent,
Turning it back over to you.
you're done, okay. Now we will continue with the public comment portion of the meeting for comments or questions on agenda items only. Question, Mrs. Saul.
Yeah, I just want to clarify and jump back. For uneducated parents such as myself, Mr. Phillips, can you tell me that 26, take school got a 26 on an ACT? That sounds great to me, until I hear that a 32 is what selective schools are looking for. Then it doesn't sound as good. Same thing with the SAT. I just don't know. That's why percentages are so helpful, and why I can then compare that to what kind of students selected colleges are looking at. Again, for uneducated parents such as myself, it would be a huge help.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, we will continue, and as you all know, there is another public comment period at the end of the meeting. All right, we have this is not the meeting to have committee reports, but does anyone have anything that is time sensitive? Okay. All right, you have a package of minutes from December 3rd in your board packages, both exec session and regular meeting minutes. Does anyone have any changes to either of those minutes? Tim, would you move the minutes?
So move M1.
May I have a second? Second. Second from Ally Lang. Winnie, when you're ready, will you call the roll?
Mr. Campbell. Mr. DeLue. Ms. Hilbert.
Aye.
Mr. Keppel.
Aye.
Ms. Lang.
Aye.
Mr. Romano. Ms. St. Aubern. Dr. Yaros Ramos.
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have an administrative item, which is the draft 2019-2020 school calendar. You've all had a chance to peruse that in detail. Michael, would you move the administrative item? May I have a second? Second. Second from Ally. H. Any questions or comments on the draft calendar? Winter break anyway? Any questions or comments? Okay, Winnie, when you're ready?
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. DeLue. Ms. Hilbert. Mr. Capo.
Nay.
Ms. Lang.
Aye.
Mr. Romano.
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert.
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos.
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
David, would you move the personnel items?
Move P1 through P8.
Okay, may I have a second? Second. Second from Ally Lang. In keeping with our rules, any matters pertaining to personnel are discussed in executive session. So Winnie, when you are ready?
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. DeLue. Ms. Hilbert.
Aye.
Mr. Capo.
Aye.
Ms. Lang. Mr. Romano.
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert.
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos.
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Before we move to business items, I'd like to draw your attention to items listed under B6. The curriculum. I always forget you. Would you move the curriculum items?
I move C1.
May I have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on curriculum items other than the fact that I omitted that? Clearly, I have something against students taking field trips. Any discussion on curriculum items? All right, we need curriculum items.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. DeLue.
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert. Mr. Capo.
Aye.
Ms. Lang. Mr. Romano.
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert.
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos.
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, now for the business items. Listed under B6 on your agenda are some donations. We received a generous donation of a snow blower from Mr. and Mrs. Malamud for Glen Ridge, for the school district, some couches from Jill McGucci and Mark Pavlik for Ridgewood Avenue School, an Adopt a Manatee membership from Peter Seymour for Ridgewood Avenue School. I hope they'll put the manatee in a safe place. And then we received a safe watering place. And then we received Education Foundation Fall 2018 Innovation Grants listed under B8. You can see various and sundry grants for teachers in their various schools. So thank you to the generous donors for the individual grants, and Ali or Dirk, I hope that you will convey to the foundation our thanks for the innovation grants. All right, Kim, would you move the business items one more time?
Yes, for the last time, I move B1 through B11, including the amended B3.
Okay. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Paul Romano. Any questions or comments on any of these business items?
Just finance wants to draw the board's attention to B4 were a couple of change orders for the NAPA project that were completed, and we are in favor of approving those changes.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on business items? All right, Winnie, if you're ready.
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Mr. DeLue.
Aye.
Ms. Hilbert. Mr. Capo.
Aye.
Ms. Lang. Mr. Romano.
Aye.
Ms. St. Aubert.
Aye.
Dr. Yaros Ramos.
Aye.
Ms. Ginsburg.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, we've now arrived at the second public comment period for questions or comments on agenda or other items. Are there questions or comments? Yes, Mrs. Solomon.
I have a statement here, and I'd just like to explain that I have a couple parts to it. One, I'd like to explain how I'm here, and then I have 3 points I'd like to make. It's not very long, but I'd like to state.
Okay, we try for something of that nature to limit it to 2 minutes, just in the interest of clarity.
And just for the interest of clarity, I have not ever heard you say that to somebody else before. So
Well, I
feel like
have,
it's
I have in fact said it to other people, but please go ahead.
But anyway, I almost got here by accident because, and I'll be candid, my daughter was hideously bullied from the first day she entered Ridgewood Avenue School. The school was completely non-responsive to that, and she endured 4 months of horrible bullying. And of course, the school found it to be non-HIV. So per the process, I made an appeal to the board. Unfortunately, I had to become very familiar with the HIV laws. We made an appeal to the board, and coincidentally, of course, you always have a meeting after the executive meeting, but I was here, so I said, let me attend this meeting. And coincidentally, it was the one where you all were presenting HIV numbers, and because I had read the HIV law extensively, I knew that the presentation did not meet the requirements as set out by the state. I got curious. It was interesting. I started coming. As other things popped up, they were interesting, not just HIV, many other things. I was quite surprised by some things I saw. There's rarely any public discussion on any topic. The BOE never presents any public debate amongst themselves. I've never heard a BOE member disagree with the party line, except for Mr. Keppel's disagreement with the calendar there. Everything, I've never heard a nay, ever until tonight. I heard a few abstentions. Very rarely do parents come. And very rarely does anybody dare say anything against what the BOE has to say. And when they do, frequently the gavel is slammed down on that. The board can say what they want, but if something that is unpleasant to the board comes up, a way is found for it to be eliminated. And that is not just me. I've seen that with other people. Legitimate questions are silenced or treated with contempt. I've also seen misinformation pass. Like the parent asked if HIV laws covered only protected classes, and everybody here nodded yes. And that's not correct, and you know it, you acknowledge it when I said that. I see it an increasingly disturbing trend. There appears to be an ever ratcheting up of hostility towards free speech in these meetings. When topics that are a matter of public record, such as law firm payments to the BOE presidents, questions about an audit, persons described as insulting. BOE members can say what they want, but other people get stifled, and the other people around them don't want to come. They don't want to subject themselves to that. I've also taken it upon myself to watch other towns' BOE meetings, and it's completely different. And most of them, they're open, they're fulsome, they're allowed to say a principal's name, they're allowed to talk about HIV, not naming individual children, but they're allowed to discuss all topics, whether they disagree or not. And the BOE members openly disagree with each other and have fulsome conversations. All elected bodies function better when there's sunshine and light into their activities instead of darkness and secrecy. So I would just tell you that I do have an agenda. I want a better schools and school district for our children, and I know that every person here wants the same. That's exactly what I want. Nobody dares ask or question anything in this Board of Education, and so I think somebody has to do it. I am not, however, alone. People do talk about this, and recent election results show that. The two people who were non-incumbents received the overwhelming number of votes. That tells you something about how people view the board. I look forward to new people, and I look forward to hopefully other people being more open and having debate and freedom of speech, and people being more willing to come to these meetings and express their opinion. Because we all want the same thing. We all want great education for our children.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay. We're seeing none. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Moved by Mike DeLue, second? Second by Tim. Thank you.